Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine a sound. It's a heartbeat, but it's relentless. It's mechanical.
That 4 on the floor.
That boots cats. You hear it in your spin class. You hear it in the background of a car commercial. You hear it pretty much everywhere. It's arguably the most pervasive sound in modern life.
It is everywhere. It's like the sonic wallpaper of the 21st century.
Exactly. Sonic wallpaper. We usually just, we ignore it or we tap our foot to it without even thinking. But today, we are going to peel back that wallpaper. We're doing a deep dive into a documentary script. It's called The House Music Story, and we're focusing on the golden era and mainstream crossover. And the whole premise here is, well, it's kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. Because we're not just talking about a genre of music. We're talking about an operating system.
That's the phrase that stuck with me, an operating system. We're looking at how a sound that started in these sweaty, dark, underground basements in Chicago.
Made by marginalized communities on really cheap equipment.
Right. And somehow that sound managed to scale up, conquer the globe, and literally become the template for how all modern pop music is constructed.
It's a journey from the absolute margins to the dead center of the cultural map. And what's so interesting about this deep dive is that it's not just about music theory.
No, not at all.
It's a story about technology. It's a story about some pretty ruthless economics. And it's a story about the law.
And some robots. We cannot forget the robots.
We will definitely get to the robots.
So our mission today is to connect these dots. How did we get from point A, those Chicago basements, to point B, which is, filling stadiums with 100,000 people? And maybe more importantly, what did we lose or gain along the way?
That is the big question.
Let's jump right in. The source material points us to the early 1990s as the first real explosion. Now, I know house had been bubbling before this in the 80s, but the sources call this the golden era. Why then? What shifted?
Well, to understand the shift, you have to understand the sound first. If you listen to 80s house, it's very raw. It's almost trance-like, Right.
It was designed for a very specific context. A dark club. 3 a.m., just getting lost in the rhythm. It wasn't really made for the radio.
It was functional music.
Yeah.
For dancing.
Exactly. But in the early 90s, producers started doing something just brilliant. They took that mechanical 4-on-the-floor beat, that thump, 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 and they paired it with something deeply human.
Oh, here we go.
They brought in gospel-trained vocalists.
The diva era.
The era of the diva. I mean, think about the track Show Me Love by Robinette.
Oh, instantly. That organ synth intro.
Yeah.
You can't not move to that.
It's iconic.
Oh.
Or CeCe Peniston, finally. Or Crystal Waters' Gypsy Woman, the one that goes, la-da-day, la-da-da.
I found myself humming that one while I was reading the notes. These songs were absolutely massive.
They were ubiquitous. And if you analyze them like the sources do, you see a formula emerging. You have the driving energy of house, but you also have the emotional structure of a classic R&B or soul song.
A verse, a chorus, a hook.
Exactly. It wasn't just a groove anymore. It was a song.
It had a human face. It put a human face on the machine. But there was also a very practical, technical reason this all exploded in the early 90s. The source material highlights production quality.
Right, because 80s electronic music, let's be honest, it could sound a little thin, kind of teeny.
It sounded like it was made in a bedroom because, well, it usually was. But by 91, samplers were getting more powerful. Studios were more accessible. The low end, the bass got deeper. The highs got crisper. And suddenly, these tracks didn't just sound good in a club. They sounded incredible on a car stereo. They were radio ready.
And once it sounded radio ready, the industry sharks started circling.
Of course. The music business loves a trend. Major labels started signing these artists. They weren't just pressing, 500 vinyl copies for DJs anymore.
No.
They were putting real marketing budgets behind them. And perhaps most importantly, MTV got involved.
The visual element, that changed everything, didn't it?
It democratized the cool. Before MTV, if you wanted to hear house, you had to be cool enough to know where the warehouse party was.
Yeah.
But once MTV puts a video like Show Me Love into rotation.
A kid in a suburb of Ohio is seeing it.
Exactly. A teenager in Tokyo is seeing it in their living room.
Yeah.
It beamed the club right into the suburbs.
It did.
Now, what's interesting in the sources, there's a note here from the expert commentary. Usually when a genre goes pop, the critics say it got watered down. But the argument here is that these 90s hits, they weren't watered down.
No, Show Me Love is still a banger. It hits hard.
Right. The rhythm wasn't compromised. The integrity of the beat was still there. It was just packaged in a way that your mom could sing along to.
Okay, so the 90s gave us the divas. We have soul, we have radio hits. But here's where the story takes this, like, hard left turn. Because if the 90s were about putting a human face on the music, the late 90s are about erasing the face entirely.
Yes. The French touch.
We have to talk about the robots, Daft Punk.
Thomas Bangalter and Guy Manuel de Homem Christo. I mean, it is genuinely hard to overstate how important they are to this whole narrative.
I feel like even people who don't like dance music know who Daft Punk are. But why were they so pivotal in this specific timeline?
They represent a complete pivot in cultural perception. Before Daft Punk, house was often seen as faceless in a bad way, just some DJ in the dark, or it was all about the singer. Rough Punk flipped the script.
The helmets.
They put on the robot helmets.
Which is just marketing genius.
Always brilliant.
Yeah.
By hiding their faces, they created this whole mythology. They weren't just two French guys pressing buttons. They were these futuristic entities. They made the production the star of the show.
And the sound was different, too. The sources call it retrofuturism. What does that actually mean when you're listening to it?
So think about their album Homework, or the massive one, Discovery. They were sampling old disco records, funk records from the 70s, music that feels really warm and nostalgic, human.
Okay, right.
But then they would run those samples through these incredibly aggressive modern filters.
Can we pause on filters for a second? For anyone listening who isn't a producer, what are we actually hearing when you say they filtered the track?
Great question. So imagine you're listening to A Party Through a Wall. It's muffled, right? All you can hear is the bass.
The thump.
That's a low-pass filter. It lets the lows pass through. Now, imagine someone suddenly opens the door. The sound is bright, it's crisp, it's screaming at you. Then they slam the door again.
So it's that whoosh effect, that underwater sound that builds up.
Exactly. Daft Punk would automate that opening and closing door in perfect time with the beat. It creates this feeling that the music is physically moving, like it's breathing.
It adds this physical tension to it.
It's mechanical precision mixed with that sampled human soul. And the result was that it made house music cool.
It really did. I remember rock kids, indie kids, people who said they hated disco, they all loved Daft Punk.
They bridged the gap. They proved that electronic music could be an album experience, that it could be art. And that paved the way for acts like Justice, the whole Ed Banger crew. They showed you could sell this sound to the world and somehow keep your credibility.
Which brings us to the moment where credibility gets a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
Because if Daft Punk was the cool art school project, what happened next was the stadium jock takeover.
The EDM explosion.
The 2010s. The sources describe this as a massive scale-up. I mean, we're talking about festivals like Ultra, Tomorrowland, EDC. These aren't clubs. These are fields with 100,000 people.
This is where the term EDM, electronic dance music, really solidifies in the U.S. as a marketing term. And the sources make this fascinating point about physics.
Physics.
Yeah. When you move from a club that holds 500 people to a stadium with 50,000, the music has to change. In a small room, you can have intricate rhythms, little subtle hi-hat patterns.
But in a stadium.
In a stadium, sound just bounces everywhere. It echoes. If the rhythm is too complex, it just sounds like mud. So the music became what they call big room.
Big room house.
Meaning simple, massive melodies.
Yeah.
Huge anthemic buildups that last for like 30, 40 seconds just to create anticipation. And then
The drop,
which became the whole point of the song.
It really did. It became the punchline.
The music was basically engineered to coordinate a crowd, build them up, make them wait, and then release the energy so 100,000 people jump at the exact same second. It's incredibly effective, but it's also very formulaic.
There's a specific watershed moment mentioned in the outline that really kicked this era off. 2011.
Calvin Harris and Rihanna, We Found Love.
That song was inescapable. You couldn't walk into a grocery store for 2 years without hearing that synth line.
Not at all. But think about what it represented. Calvin Harris was this guy making, tech house beats. Rihanna was arguably the biggest pop star on the planet.
Right.
And when they collaborated, it wasn't some niche remix. It was a #1 global smash hit.
It blurred the lines completely.
It erased the lines. Suddenly, house producers weren't just the guys behind the scenes. They were the pop stars. You had Swedish House Mafia selling out Madison Square Garden.
A venue for, the Rolling Stones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Avicii, David Guetta. These guys became household names.
And this brings us to the genre fusion section of our deep dive, because once you reach that scale, you have to keep expanding your audience, right? You have to eat up other genres. And some of these experiments were wild. I mean, Avicii's Wake Me Up.
A country song.
Well, I remember when that came out, people were so confused.
He debuted it at Ultra, and the sources say that people actually booed. They thought a banjo and a bluegrass singer on stage and thought, what is this? What happened to our music?
But it worked. Boy, did it work.
It became one of the biggest dance tracks in history because it took the sort of folk sincerity of country and just put it over the raw energy of house chi. It proved that the house DNA, as the script calls it, is a universal adapter.
A universal adapter. I like that.
You can plug it into anything.
Right.
Look at David Guetta. He was building bridges with hip-hop and R&B.
Yeah, Usher, Flo Rida.
Nicki Minaj. Or you have Disclosure working with Sam Smith on Latch, bringing that classy UK garage sound straight to the pop charts.
So the result is that today, even if you're listening to a pop artist who has never stepped foot in a club, the production underneath their voice is using tools invented in Chicago basement.
For sure. The build, the drop, the four-on-the-floor kick.
Yeah.
It's the infrastructure of modern pop.
But massive success always brings massive criticism. And the source material dives into this really interesting tension between the underground and the mainstream.
Right.
Because usually we tell this story as a war, the real artists versus the sellout.
That's the standard narrative, yeah. The underground purists looked at the stadium EDM stuff, the neon tank tops, the cake front.
And said, this is garbage. This is ruining our culture.
And to be fair, a lot of it was pretty cheesy. It was commercial product.
Yeah.
The expert in our text argues it's more complicated than just good versus bad. It's an ecosystem.
An ecosystem. How so?
Think about the economics. The major labels make mountains of money from the commercial hits. That cash flow lets them take risks on smaller, more experimental artists. But even more important is the gateway drug effect.
The funnel.
Right. A 19-year-old kid might go to a festival to see the main stage headliner because they heard their song on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
But then they wander off to get water. They walk past the side stage, and they hear a deep house set or some minimal techno.
Something deeper, something a little darker.
And they think, whoa, what is this? And suddenly they start digging. They look up the labels. The mainstream actually feeds the underground with new fans.
So it's not a war, it's a recruitment drive. That's a really optimistic way to look at it.
It is.
But if the culture is surviving, the business of making the music has changed radically. And this brings us to the final and honestly the most mind-bending part of this deep dive. The environment producers are working in right now, specifically streaming and the law.
These are the two invisible hands shaping what music sounds like today.
Let's start with streaming. The sources mentioned the 30-second rule. I didn't realize how much this actually impacted the songwriting itself.
It's a brutal reality. On platforms like Spotify, a stream only counts, so the artist only gets paid if the listener stays past the 30-second mark.
So if I skip at 29 seconds, the artist gets zero.
Zero. Now think about a classic house track. It might have a 1 or 2 minute intro. Just a drum beat slowly building. It's patient.
It takes its time.
But on Spotify, patience is poverty. If you have a 2-minute intro, the average listener skips. So producers started changing the architecture of the songs.
Yeah.
They front load everything.
The hook, the melody, the main vocal, it's all in the first 10 seconds.
Right at the 0.01 mark. The algorithm is literally dictating the art form.
That is wild. And then there's the legal side. We talked about how house was built on sampling bits of old funk and disco records, but the sources mentioned the Wild West days of sampling are long, long gone.
Oh, long gone. The pivotal moment was a case in 1991, Gilbert O'Sullivan versus Biz Markie. It set a strict precedent. You cannot just take a piece of someone else's recording, no matter how small. You have to clear it.
And clearing a sample isn't like paying a $50 fine.
Oh, no. We're talking thousands of dollars up front, plus a percentage of royalties, sometimes 50% or even 100% of the entire song's earnings.
Which is impossible for a bedroom producer.
Exactly. So creativity hits a paywall. But the sources list some fascinating workarounds.
Okay, how are they getting around this?
Well, creativity loves constraints, so one method is replays. Instead of sampling the original James Brown record, you hire a band to play the exact same riff in a studio.
Wait, how does that help? You're still stealing the riff?
You're using the composition, yes, so you have to pay the songwriter, but you own the new recording. You don't have to pay the record label that owns the master tape. It's way cheaper to clear.
That is incredibly sneaky.
It's just business. Another method is interpolation. This is huge right now. You don't sample the sound. You have a singer re-sing the melody of an old hit, but with new lyrics.
Like when you hear a new pop song and you think, wait, I know that melody from a song in the 90s.
Exactly. It triggers that nostalgia, but legally, it's a totally new recording. And the most creative one is transformative use.
Okay.
You take a sample and you chop it, you pitch shift it, distort it, and rearrange it so drastically that it's unrecognizable. You turn a vocal into a synth.
So you're just hiding the crime.
Or you're creating a whole new instrument. The legal restrictions actually forced producers to invent new sounds because they couldn't afford the old ones.
It's amazing how resilient the genre is. Every time a door closes, whether it's technology, money, or the law house music, just finds a window to climb through.
It's fluid. That's why it survived.
So let's zoom out. We went from the soulful human divas of the 90s
To the robots of Daft Punk who embraced the machine and made it cool.
to the stadium explosion where the drop became a weapon of mass movement.
And finally to today, where the genre's everywhere, woven into the fabric of pop, but it's also, fighting against algorithms and copyright lawyers.
The source material ends on this idea of a paradox. House music is now simultaneously a commercial juggernaut, literally in Target commercials, and it's still thriving in the underground. Both things are true.
It has a high end and a low end.
And it makes you think about the future. I want to leave our listener with a thought that kind of popped into my head reading this. We've talked about how the rules, legal and algorithmic, are tighter than ever. You have to grab attention in 30 seconds. You can't sample without a lawyer. The walls are closing in.
It's a high-pressure environment for a new artist, for sure.
So the question is the vibe still the only rule? Or have the rules finally taken over the vibe? Is the future of music about following the formula perfectly to please the algorithm? Or is real creativity now about breaking the formula so hard that the algorithm doesn't even know what to do with you?
That is the question. And I suspect the kid in the basement making beats right now is already working on the answer.
I hope so. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure.